Hey guys and gals, and welcome to the second tutorial of this series. And what today we're going to be seeing are variables in Java and are they useful for. So what a variable is just a name for a value. So we can use a certain value and store it inside a name, and then we can use that name to refer to that value anywhere in our program. So let me explain you what I mean using the code. So if I write string text equals hello world, I'm creating a variable called text. I can change this to anything I want. So basically I can change it to ast or anything. I'll just name it text for the moment, and it's of type string. And there are various different types of variables in Java. There are string variables which hold text. There are integer variables which hold integer numbers, so whole numbers. There are double variables which hold double precision numbers, so numbers with a decimal point. There are character variables which hold single characters, and so on. Let me create a variable of each of the most important data types for you to see them. So I created an integer variable called x, and it holds the value 5. Integer variables cannot hold decimal points, so if I say 5.5, it gives me an error. So I just can use whole numbers. And then I've got double, which I'll say it's, for example, 15.89. And double variables can hold decimal points. So that's something to take into account. When you are not sure if you will hold decimal points or not in your variables, you can always use double variables instead of integers. And then finally we've got character variables. Now this isn't a very interesting variable to have, because we're creating a variable called c, and it's of type character, so it can only hold single characters. But we've called our variable c, and it holds the value c. So usually instead of creating a variable for that, we can just directly use the value. A different thing would be, for example, a variable called exit of type character. And this could be the value q. But then the user could be able to change it to, for example, x or something like that. And then having a variable called exit means we have a name for the value which tells the programmer what the variable means, and this helps keep your code clean. So giving your variables good names, descriptive names, is vital. In this case I've named my variables x and y and text, so these aren't very good names to have for your variables. But trust me, having good names for your variables is vital when you get to actually program large stuff. So now let's get to using these variables. I've got a string variable called text, and it holds the text hello world. So let's instead of say system.out.println hello world, we can say println text, or at least we should be able to. Okay. We can't, but it can be something a bit more complicated to actually use a variable this way. So before actually explaining how to use a variable in this case, I'm going to explain something about object-oriented programming. And what object-oriented programming is basically we've got classes which are models for objects. So a class is like a model for an object. Like, for example, the design of a chair helps then whoever makes the chair actually make the correct chair and accurate chair. And this, in this case, is the same. We've got a main class which is a model for a main object, and then the main object will have its own properties. So main object will have its own text variable. And this means that each main object can have its own text variable. And this is especially useful, for example, when you're creating an object, let's say, for an NPC in a role-playing game, you would create a public class NPC, and then and then the class would say string name, and then not assign a value to it, and then each object you created of that class would have its own name. And it's the same thing for the main class. So we have to create and this is how we create a new main class, a new main object, sorry. We specify first of all the name of the class, and then we give it a name for the object. So this is the name of the class, this is the name of the object we're creating, and then we say new main. So basically we're getting a new main object, and you may ask, what the hell are these brackets doing here? Just know for the moment that these brackets have to be after the second time you call the class name. So basically class name, object name, and then new class. And then we come to the m.text part. Basically what this says is we're accessing the text variable which is inside the m object. So basically we're creating an object of this class, and this class has a text variable. So we're accessing basically the text variable of m. And this starts to get interesting as we create new objects. For example, main b equals new main. I'm just writing the same thing, I'm just changing the name. So basically we can say b.text equals hi, for example. And now if we print out, let me just copy and paste this. Now let's see what happens when we run this. First things first, m.text is going to access the text variable of the m object. Theoretically, this variable should be hello world. And then we're creating a new b object, which is an object of the main class, and we're changing its text variable. So we're accessing text inside the b object, and we're changing the value of that variable from hello world to hi. So basically we're replacing the old value with a new value, and then we're going to be printing the text variable of the b object too. So let's have a look at this. We have hello world, and then we have hi. So this is interesting, especially because we can create multiple objects and each one has its own variables. So let's actually do something a bit different. Instead of using a main method and creating new objects, and that's this stuff which is a bit complicated for the beginner, one must admit. Let's delete everything. And in the next lesson, I'm running out of time, that's why. In the next lesson we're going to be seeing that new library I talked about in the last lesson, which will be much beginner friendly, and it will help you understand everything about Java in a much simpler way, rather than having to learn all this complicated stuff about main methods and public and static and void and creating objects of the class. This library we're going to be using basically will help us understand the code and get programming better in a more easier way. So I'll wait for the next lesson to start on that, and basically that's it. Remember to subscribe if you understood something, and if you like the videos, of course, and keep up for future videos. And that's it. I'll see you in the next one.